Hey guys, today we're going to talk about timber and pulp again, and today's topic is investing in timber versus buying pulp stocks. The summary for today is that Portugal is a huge Eucalyptus Globulus producer. The second point is that Portuguese timber investors depend on Altri and Navigator, which are the two duopoly companies, the two buyers of food in Portugal. And the third topic is that pulp makers have other dependencies like BHKP prices, which is the commodity that they produce and sell, and China, which is another dependency. Today we're going to look at the peculiar case of Portugal when it comes to investing in timber. Portugal is a very big Eucalyptus globulus grower in absolute terms and the biggest one in relative terms. And you have a quote, and this quote is from Global Forest Coalition, which is a non-profit. And you have the link in the written post at startpickinginsights.com. And this quote says that Portugal leads Europe in another statistic. It has more land planted with eucalyptus than any other EU country. Concentrated in the north and central regions, roughly 10% of Portugal's land area is planted with E. globulus, Eucalyptus globulus, which is an exotic, highly invasive, fast-growing subtropical tree. And this is the main part. In absolute terms, only Brazil, India, Australia, and China have more eucalyptus relative giants compared to Portugal. But proportionally, because Portugal is a small country, Portugal has by far the largest area planted with eucalyptus in the world. So they are a very, very significant grower of these trees. Yet, only two companies control most of the demand in Portugal, and that is again Navigator and Altri. Both use E. globulus to make pulp, but Navigator is more vertically integrated, and that means that they use the pulp that they themselves produce to make consumer products. And going a bit deeper on that, they sell about 20% of the pulp they produce. They keep the other 80% to make, for example, tissue and printing and writing paper. Sites from these two other uses for timber are home furniture, telephone poles, and fence posts. So there are other users for wood, but the Navigator and Altri control the pulp demand. Timber is a clear textbook commodity, providing at first sight protection against demand pull inflation. Yet, due to the existence of a Portuguese oligopoly or duopoly, timber prices don't inflate as expected. And why is that? Altri and Navigator can also get their timber either from self-managed forests or from abroad. In the self-managed forest part, you have an example of Altri, which has a self-sufficiency level of 20%. So 20% of what they consume to make pulp is self-produced. And Navigator on the getting the wood from abroad part, Navigator has an example, and they are doing timber investments in Mozambique, and you will see an image in the written post at startpickinginsights.com. You will see that they have invested 130 million US dollars to plant 13, almost 14,000 hectares. And so this is a significant investment if you consider the bottom line of Navigator. And these two factors will leave upward pressure on Portuguese timber prices. So if they see that they are moving the market by buying too much and putting too much demand in Portuguese timber, they just take that demand elsewhere, and that will cool down pricing in Portugal. Then you have geographical concentration. There is concentration in demand by geography, and if you take a look at China, China accounts for 50% of world's BHKP demand. So this is a very big number. Half of all the pulps, this kind of pulp demand is comes from China. If they manage to produce timber in-house instead of buying it from abroad, it may crush ex-Chinese pulp companies' margins, such as Altri, because they sell to them and they would lose that customer. And there is a very interesting image that shows that China drives the demand for this kind of pulp, the BHKP, concentrating demand in a single region, and you will see that the demand has been growing at around 8% CAGR. That's a huge difference compared to the world demand, which has grown at 3% CAGR. So China clearly drives the demand for hardwood craft pulp. Another chart that shows that it is a chart on absolute 1,000 tons of demand instead of on a percentage basis of growth. And you'll see that China is a straight line from bottom left to upright, and that pales, and the others pale compared to China in terms of growth. Some final remarks is that investing in timber is a different game in Portugal because, in other words, it's a very specific environment because the market is very rigged, controlled by a few companies, which is now Altri and Navigator. This particularity leaves you exposed to the intricacies of pulp stocks. In other words, if Portuguese pulp stocks suffer, Portuguese timber owners will too because they depend on these companies. A timber investor in Portugal shouldn't expect timber prices to increase significantly over time, even if demand for pulp increases, which apparently it is increasing. And last time we've talked about Altri, we've seen that. We've seen that BHKP prices tend to go up. And I haven't said that on the latest podcast and post, but they go up on about 4% KHR over 15 years. So still, even if that happens, it doesn't mean that prices will bleed into the investors, the timber investors in Portugal. So the people that own the land and the wood. In Portugal, pulp stocks are more volatile than timber investments, and this is due to pulp stocks being exposed to BHKP market prices because um, we've said that on the latest posts. We've said that BHKP prices are volatile, like most commodities, and that adds a layer of complexity due to the uncertainty of cash flows. Um, on the other hand, they are less exposed to forest fire risks due to diversification across timber sources. So, if you own a piece of land and the piece of land burns, you don't have any diversification. It's all your profits are at least delayed and in the worst case scenario gone. So that hasn't happened. Of course, it is a risk for all three and Navigator, but it isn't such a big risk compared to an individual owner, unless that owner itself diversifies in terms of geographies. It is also curious to note that, unlike one would expect, timberland prices haven't been inflationary in Portugal, so they haven't gone up in price much in the latest decades. This is, in my opinion, due to a decrease in timberland demand, um, and this reduction is caused by forest fires because Portugal has been the target of lots of forest fires for the latest decades, even. But not only this is reducing demand, but also a generational mindset change. It is also too. Young people don't care about owning land anymore, and that takes the pressure off land the timberland prices in Portugal. So you would expect that land prices would go up because land is limited. It is a limited resource and can be exported. You can sell wood to the pulp companies, but that isn't happening because less and less people are wanting lands. They want to get rid of the lands that they own because they are afraid that it will burn and the their sons and family don't want the land either. So that reduces the demand for more land. Putting it all together, one must compare timber investment returns to pulp stock returns to draw a conclusion. It's not a clear choice because uh, if pulp stocks get cheap enough, and we can, as a rule of thumb, compare BHKP prices to operational costs on a per ton basis, per ton produced. Um, if they get cheap enough, it may be better than buying the timberland itself and produce your own wood. What's clear is that Portuguese timber investment scene is a very peculiar one because it is again dominated by two companies. Uh, if we abstract ourselves from Portugal, it may be a whole nother story. In other countries, timber's main use may not even be pulp, and that changes the whole story. But it's an interesting case about Portugal. And then you have some action points, three questions. First one is, do the companies that I own depend on a few customers? The second one is, do the commodities I own really protect me against inflation? And the last one is, am I blindly expecting land to protect me against inflation? If so, will it really? And that's it for today, guys. If you like the content, please share, and we'll see you next week.